invest in yourselves. I hope I will be able to help in sharing my experiences and answering any of your questions along the way. It's lovely to meet everybody via this webinar format. I will try to keep this engaging as well as informative. So please do sit back, relax, and listen and watch the slides that we have for you. Alan, could we bring up the slides, please? The first slide.
Yes, Pallavi, just a second.
Thank you. Alan is helping me navigate the slides so that I can still see a little bit of the video and also what's happening. Uh-oh, I seem to have lost my screen. Okay, got it. All right. So one of the things that's very critical about doing sessions like this is to ensure that the audience gets what they came for. Now, I'm told that there are several participants are coming from several different backgrounds, and they're ultimately all looking to understand about product management. So I'm going to try and really tie together various and what, as product managers, how do we prepare? And if you want to do product management, how do you prepare for this? So periodically throughout the session, I will try to stop and ask if there are any questions. Please do feel free to use the tools, raise your hand, or if you don't mind, turn on your video and just wave so that I will be able to understand that you have a question, and then we can actually have a conversation. One thing that really stands out for me in any session that I attend and that I participate in is something that Sheryl Sandberg said. Sheryl Sandberg said, please ask the dumb question. Everybody else will be really glad that you did. And it's the easiest way to become popular. So there's no such thing as a dumb question. So at any point in time, please do feel free to ask the question. It's important for all of us to be liked and to be social, and this is going to be like an easy way for all of us to create a community here. Okay? And it's been a crazy week. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. Anybody want to put out onto the chat on what is happening in the world? Okay, so thank you, Arvind. Thank you, Sejal. Yes, Corona is on everybody's mind. COVID-19, yes. Oh, yes, bank.
Yes, bank.
Yes, that's right as well. And working from home, I don't know if some of you have already been mandated to work from home, or you're opting to. But yeah, it's a mixed up world, and we're all a little uncertain about what the future holds for us. And so that's really what I'm going to try and talk about. It's a heavy topic, and I'm going to try to go from 30,000 feet to something that's practical and usable for each of you. So let's demystify this a little. You and we as humans are truly worried when we don't know what to expect. But we don't know what is out there, right? We fear the absence of knowledge. We fear, the only thing to fear is fear itself. Once we know what to expect, then each of you has the knowledge. Each of you will have the ability to face the future. We need to have the clarity of mind. We need to have the thought. We need to know how to find the path ahead. And I have full confidence that each and every one of you will leave today's session with the mind frame, with the knowledge, and with the ability to find the path ahead. Now, to do that, we need to look at some of the larger trends that are happening in the world around us. So we will analyze those trends and then distill it down to what that means for us. And we will arrive at a core skill that will help us prepare for the future. Alan, can we move on to the next slide? Thank you. So the first trend that we're going to look at is agriculture. Now, agriculture and farms, these are all very familiar to us. You've seen people, men, women, children, doing manual labor, planting crops, picking fruits, packing vegetables, right? Using some mechanization, some tractors, some equipment. But where is the future? Where is the future moving towards in this field? When Israel was first settled, many, many years ago, many decades ago, there were no farms, very little greenery, and water scarcity was the order of the day. The first settlers, the first people who moved to that part of the world and created the country of Israel, they studied what kind of crops can we plant here? What is the conditions that the crops need to grow? How much water does the plant need to survive? They experimented and they learned. They pioneered the system of drip irrigation and controlled irrigation, controlled plant growth. And little by little, they planted trees, crops, fruit orchards. They figured out what can grow and how to make it grow. And today, Israel is a largely green country. What we're also seeing is countries like Scandinavia, where they're using computers to monitor soil temperature. When is the right time to plant? What is the moisture content needed? They're using computers to even control the amount of light and heat that a plant needs to be given. This is the trend in agriculture. Alan, let's move on to the next slide to look at another trend, please. This is a picture that will be familiar to most of you. Car manufacturing gave modern Earth the very first large-scale factory production of equipment. Car industry pioneered the concept of an assembly line. Most of you may have heard the story of the Ford Model T and how they went from, the famous quote of, give me a faster horse. If you ask a customer only, they say, give me a faster horse. But what they really mean is I need to get from point A to point B faster and in a more reliable way. So fast forwarding that to today, right, and looking to what it is tomorrow. Now, let me again look to the chat window. Can anybody tell me where the first photograph is, the present photo? What factory is that? What car company is it? Yeah, thank you, Aditya. It is Maruti Suzuki's plant right now. Now, the second photograph, which is the future, where is that photo at? Any guesses? Any guess? Okay, we've got Honda, we've got Japan, we've got Tata and Ford. Okay, Sajal got it right. It is also Maruti in Delhi. Both those photographs are from their Noida plant, Gurgaon plant, I forget now, but basically their plant outside NCR. And the first picture, the down picture, shows how things are operating on large scale across most of their plants. The second photograph is more of a demonstration, an experiment, a model plant that they've done where they're trying to do the entire assembly with robots. So pretty soon, every car that we buy is going to have parts that are built by robots. Very soon, entire cars are going to be built by robots. And I think we're at a point where pretty much most products that we buy will have some level of robotic assembly involved in it. Is there a question? Okay. So robotics engineering, the hardware as well as the software needed to automate the robot, synchronize the tasks, and to be able to complete and coordinate between the tasks. This is a clear trend for the future. Alan, let's move on to the next slide, please. So while we're looking at trends in other industries, let's look at something that's a little bit more familiar to us. Right? Office work, something that everybody here should be familiar with, and everybody kind of realizes that office work as we know it is getting redefined very soon. 20 years ago, virtual collaboration tools did not exist. 10 years ago, virtual teams did not exist. Yet today, we take these things for granted. So things are changing rapidly. The gig economy is getting established. People are getting hired and paid for their work, but they're not really treated as employees. The tools that we use today, things like Word or email, even Google, all of these tools are ripe for disruption. How will we visualize our diagrams going forward? How will we draw our flowcharts? How will we write user specifications? How will we code? How will we build? How will we manufacture? What is apparent is that all of these things are going to change. Right? And what is being defined very rapidly is how these things will change. So what we need to do is learn from the best, learn by looking back, and prepare for the future. Let's move on to the next slide, Alan. So the real change is coming in the industries that did not adopt technology, in the industries that are recently adopting technologies, and the industries where technology disruption is at the highest. Anybody here born in anybody here remember the 1990s? Okay, good. I'm glad a few people remember the 1990s. Anybody here was born before the 1990s? Hopefully. All right, good. So maybe some of you read the news back then, or at least here can relate to the story that I'm going to tell you. It was the early 1990s when there was the biggest strike of all bank employees in India. I think in the history of India, that was the one time when the maximum number of banks shut down because the bank employees went on strike. And they went on strike because they didn't want computers to be installed in the branches. They went on strike saying, where we don't need computers, it's not going to make things better. We don't need computers, we're just as capable of doing it. The fear of losing their jobs, the fear of automation and mechanization coming in was a real threat. And state bank employees across the country, when I say state, I mean nationalized banks across the country saw employees walk out in protest against computers. Today we're seeing we've come a long way since then. Right? It's not about fearing computers, it's really about the lack of them. So any industry that has not embraced or adopt technology, the first change is coming there, that they are going to move towards technology. Your car is not just a car. Your car is a computer. Microprocessors control how much fuel is getting injected into the engine. IC chips control acceleration, deceleration, braking. And if you're in an accident, your car can even call emergency services for you. That's how advanced the car is. So the future is about identifying these ancillary industries, the real world industries that need technology in order to leapfrog, need technology in order to modernize, need technology to create efficiencies, and to be able to be part of the journey of those industries as they adopt technology. So let me stop here and ask if there are any questions. I'm looking at the chat window. Any questions? So far, we're talking about the larger trends. I understand this is a very high level perspective. And what I'm trying to do is impress upon everybody that the future is a very vast and unknown place. And in order to really, in order to get to there, we need to be able to read the tea leaves. We have to be able to understand the trends and And by understanding the trends is how we will identify what are the forces that are changing them. I have a question from Arvind Ravichandran. How do we prepare to adapt to the future workforce? That's a great question. And so that's a perfect segue into the next part of the talk. Salin, please let's move on to the next slide. So where does these trends leave us as product managers? Okay? So what I'm asking you to do is step back. You're thinking very tactically. You're thinking in terms of what is the next step for my job? What's the next job I need to take? What is the next course I have to learn? Do I have to start figuring out agile systems? Do I need to go and enroll in in an ML course or in an AI course? Yeah, those are great questions to ask. Okay? But to me, those are tactical. To me, those are things that come next. First, focus inwards. First, identify your strengths. First, understand yourself in terms of what are you good at? Where are you coming from? Right? And this also includes acknowledging what are you not good at? What is it that perhaps you're doing because somebody told you to do? Or that you were forced into doing. Leverage your strengths. Identify your strengths, leverage your strengths, and do more of what you're good at. Second, focus on your interests. You need to care about the subject. You may be working in a job today. You may be working in TCS with a client who is a bank in the US. Okay. You may be working in Zoho. You may be working in Freshworks. You may be working in a company that's building a software for a particular tool. Okay. These are all tasks. These are all jobs. These are all existing industries. Okay. The real opportunity for a product manager lies in managing products that you care about. So leverage your strength and focus on your interest and become an expert on that topic. That is when you start being able to identify what is really able to make an impact in that area. Being a generalist doesn't help anybody. What you need to do is pick an area and actually be able to become a subject matter expert on that. And in order to do that, you need to be able to give it your best. And hence, I'm asking you to focus on your strengths and focus on your interests. And that is your first step towards identifying, am I really going to be good at what I'm picking? And then once you pick what you're going to focus on, what you're going to put all your energies to, what are you committing to picking up? Then look at what are the supporting skill sets that you need to be successful in this area. So by doing these three things, you will be able to pick an area that you like doing, that has potential for the future, and it's going to be fun for you to do it. And so you're going to be good at it. So pick areas with these three things in mind. Now coming to becoming a product manager, right? This is true for any field that you're going to be in. But if you're going to try to create a product, right? You're going to try and build something, then you have to go from thinking of yourself as just as a product manager to actually thinking of yourself as the manager, the person who's actually managing the entire product lifecycle. What is it? Why is it? How is it? Right? Like all of the aspects of product definition you need to have a grip, you need to have a handle on all the aspects of the product definition. There are ultimately three kinds of product managers. Okay. One, an engineer who becomes a product manager. Two, a designer who becomes a product manager. And three, a business owner, a specialist who comes into becoming a product manager. Right? Only three, right? Studied engineering, you worked in engineering, you're moving into a product management role. Two, you're a designer, you did some level of UI, human computer interface, hardware interface, right? You were some sort of a designer and you came into an interest in product management. Three, you were either a founder, you were an owner, or you did something from a business angle, and from there you're coming into becoming and creating a product. Each of you will fit into this category. Each of you will identify with what your background is and from where you're coming into becoming a product manager. Figure out which one you are in, learn the other two. Right? You have to learn the ancillary skills in order to become a product manager. You can't say I'm a designer, so I don't know technology. Can't say that anymore as a product manager. You can say, oh, I understand the business, I understand how banking works, and so I'm not going to talk about, oh, the tech stuff, they'll figure it out. No, it doesn't work like that. So along with identifying your strengths and focusing on your interests, right? Figure out where you're coming from and how are the ancillary things that you need to know. Let me pause there again. Any questions?
Not a question, but I think Pallavi would agree with me. There is this article from Marty Keegan, founder of SVPG Group.
Mm-hmm.
There is an article that assesses the strengths of a product manager.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
I can link the document. It's a great article. Do check it out.
That would be brilliant, Alit. I think that would be exactly complementary and next level of detail to what I've described. And if people are interested, they should definitely use that as a strength to find their strengths. There are other strength finder tools as well. Most recently, there is a book and a tool on the website from Gallup called Strengths Finders. I strongly recommend that as well. And there's also something very geared towards technology industries and towards product management that helps one identify their skill sets. Those are also very good tools.
Lavi, I had one question. So you talked about supporting skills. If you could just give some details on what are those skills and where you could learn those.
Absolutely. So when I mean supporting skills, I mean in fact, let's go to the next slide. I will explain in context of what we're going to be presenting next. Okay? So we just covered the first step of understanding your strengths and then how you actually make a swap to being a product manager. Right? So if that is the first step, the second step is to understand how to be a good product manager. The steps to be a good product manager are deceptively simple. Okay? It feels like, is this all that it's going to take? Anyone can throw out complex jargon. It's distilling it into simple things that's really hard. And to me, product managers don't do extraordinary things. They do simple stuff extraordinarily well. Product managers are not heroes. They're not knights in shining armor. They don't come, riding riding on a horse or driving a fast car, the last scene of the movie to save the day. That's not being a good PM. Good PM is waking up every day and running the marathon. A good PM is somebody who avoids the bad stuff before it happens. Good PM doesn't, if your product bombs and you need to come in at the last minute, get all your engineers to work the whole night in order to fix something, you're a bad PM. You should have seen that coming. How can you have, like what happened with Yes Bank last week? So several of the major wallets went offline because Yes Bank was the primary processing partner for all bank transactions for their entire wallet. To me, that is a huge red flag. You cannot have a single point of failure when you're building a product. When you have something as critical as the payments processing for your app, you need to have a backup option. You need to be able to have the ability to route traffic so that when there is a spike, you're able to still handle the large inflow. We have a Black Friday sale. We need to anticipate that there is going to be a spike. So when there is a spike, we know a spike, we plan that it's going to be a 1x spike, a 5x spike, it's a 10x spike. It's a good thing to get hit with a 100x spike. And so we need to have a backup plan that we're able to increase capacity. That is being a good PM. So your question in terms of what are the ancillary skills that we need to have? Okay? So the five steps for me that everybody needs to practice to be a good PM. First, observational skills. We can't live in our own world. It's not something that we're an ostrich and we stick our head in and we know what's right and we tell everybody what to do. No, that is not being a good PM. You need to stop talking and actually listen. You need to listen to your engineers, you need to listen to your designers. Most importantly, you need to listen to your customers. You need to understand what are your users doing, what are they not able to do, and how do we know what are the problems that they are facing. It is through careful observation that we are able to identify problems. What are the friction areas? Let's see the challenges that our users are facing in getting the job done. And through these, we identify opportunities to create efficiencies. So this combination of being able to observe and identify the problem are critical PM skills. The next three that I've pointed out, quantification, right? Like how do you quantify what is the problem? This again goes back to the question, right? We all need to have some level of analytic skills. So if you need to quantify, you need to be able to project out. You need to be able to estimate. You need to be able to do guesstimates in terms of what you think the magnitude is going to be. How is it going to impact? We need to have the skills to be able to put a proposal together and to actually be able to go out and present it in a convincing manner. So communication skills are critical here. In quantifying and proposing, we need to have financial skills. Anything that we propose has a financial impact. How many resources do we want? How much time is it going to take? What is the what are the resources going to cost? What are the tools? What is the fixed cost? What is the investment that we have to make? So these are questions that will come up, and a good PM does need to understand analytics, finance, as well as presentation and the ability to convince somebody. Right? And the final thing to me is validation. Right? We need to have experimentation skills. It can be a bunch of bright people sitting in a room with a really great idea, but the rubber hits the road when somebody actually uses it. So in order to build a good product, you need to be able to experiment. Build something fast, build something quick, take it to a limited set of people, test it, observe how they're using it, and repeat the whole process again. That's how we iterate and build a better product. And the person who's going after me, Abhishek, is going to be talking about discovery and product development process. So I'll stop here, and please do stay and listen to Abhishek, and he will be able to give you a full, a much more deeper insight on this. So let me pause there. Any questions?
No, Pallavi. Thank you so much for the answer.
Welcome. So Alan, let's go on to the next slide. And this is my last slide. I know I'm running on top of time. Okay. So what is the skill set that we all need for the future of work? To me, it's the ability to adapt. We can't live in the past. We have to learn from the past. Keep the good stuff, avoid the bad stuff, and learn to adapt to whatever circumstance that we are put into. Can we live in the houses of the past? We lived in huts, we lived in caves. We can't live like that anymore. Right? Can we have the medicines of the past? Imagine going to the dentist 100 years ago without anesthesia. Don't like going to the dentist even right now. So what is it that we can learn from the past? Is there good stuff in the past? Yes, history teaches us a lot of really good lessons. But we really need to know what to expect in the future. And to me, that's simple. Look at the trends. Overall, where are the industries moving? Right? Do not fear change, embrace change, and look at industries that are resisting change and move towards that. Let's not stick comfortably with our BFS and our standard the industries that we've gotten comfortable with. Let's move towards industries where technology is needed and where technology can make an impact. And then identify what are the courses you need to take towards becoming an expert in that industry, towards building products and solutions for those challenges, opportunities, and problems. And the skills of doing that are very simple. It's really being able to observe what is happening there and being able to identify problems and challenges, and then being able to create a solution that you're able to validate, experiment, test, and improve upon. And the most important thing is to have an open mind and to be ready to adapt to any challenge that comes your way, because there will be a lot of unknowns, and it takes a mind frame to be ready for that. And I know each of you can do it. I know each of you will have the fact that you're here in itself shows that you have a willingness to learn and that you have a willingness to make a difference. And so this is not the time to say, oh, waterfall didn't work, agile works, and so now all I'm going to do is agile. No, 5 years later, it's going to be something else. Right? Oh, there was PC and now there's Mac, and Mac is so much better. I don't think there's anything else that's needed. No, in another 5 years, we're going to have something else. So it's all about embracing change and being able to understand what are the trends out there, and then being able to adapt and learn continuously and be able to create value. That is what I expect the future of work to be. And to me, this is the truth in how we can be successful in managing for the future. Thank you, everybody. Happy to take any further questions.
Great session, Pallavi. I think there are a couple of questions that we have from the chat. So first one is from Deepak, which is, as a PM, what are must-have analytical skills? And maybe you can take questions after that.
Okay. I see there are some more questions in the chat window as well. Okay. So what are the must-have analytical skills? Okay. So to me, when you're talking, if you're asking me for a list of tools, okay, in terms of what you need to study, that will always be evolving, right? So ultimately, it's about being able to deal with data. So what is the raw data that is needed for understanding your product and your industry? Where is that raw data coming from, right? You need to make sure that your data is right. For example, I'll tell you a story. So there's a product that we launched, and we kept saying, oh my God, like nobody's using this feature. Like, what's wrong with this? The first day we saw, a few percentage point rise. Second day we saw a few percentage point rise. Like, what's going on? Why aren't people using this? Something wrong with the product? What's going on? And our engineers kept trying to look at, is something wrong? Why are people not able to find the product, or what is happening? And then we realized there is still some level of transactions that are going through. So what is happening? Like, we just could not understand the usage patterns at all. And then we realized that the fundamental data that we were looking at is wrong. The instrumentation on the pages were wrong. And so we were losing, while people were using the product. So the real data showed that there was transaction completion, but in terms of analytics, it looked like people were getting stuck and people were dropping off in different places. And so we couldn't tie the story together. We couldn't tie the story in terms of how are people finding the site, how are people coming into the pages, how are people coming into the flow, and how are they actually completing the flow. So to me, analytics skills is one, in terms of understanding the raw data, two, understanding instrumentation, and then being able to tie the quantitatives together in order to tell a qualitative story. Like, what is the actual qualitative finding that we're taking out of this? That is critical. And finally, I think you need to have the skill to visualize the data. So just throwing a spreadsheet with a set of numbers isn't enough. You need to be able to put that into a pictograph, an infograph, a visualization that presents the picture, presents the viewpoint that that you need your audience to take away. Those are the critical analytical skills. Alan, should I just go through the questions in
I think,
the
uh,
chat?
Pallavi, I'll just like say the questions and the names of the folks who have asked it.
Okay.
So Suhas had an interesting question around your time at PayPal. So he asked, over the course of your career, how has the role of a PM changed, and especially at PayPal?
Okay. Well, yeah, it's retrospecting back. I think 10 years ago there was no job description for a product manager. There was the industry was, the industry knew the term. It's been around for a little bit longer than that. But there were PMMs, there were PMs, there were TPMs, and now I hear this term APM being thrown around. Right? So there were technical product managers, and it wasn't very clear what a product manager did. Was it a project manager? Was it a program manager? So it was very nascent industry, and a lot of these roles were really being defined and being created. So to me, the role has changed a lot. In early on, a product manager was also used to do sales. A product manager was also used to do was also just treated as a documentation writer. Or just write all these things up so that the engineers have a backup. I think the worst role of being a PM is that you're pretty much the fall guy. If the product works well, then the engineers get the success, and if the product goes bad, then the PM gets the blame. I think that's probably the worst situation that I've been in, and I'm glad that the industry has come a long way since then.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks for sharing about that. I think another question by Gagan was how to measure success as a PM. I think this is a question that a lot of the people in the group might have. So thought it would be interesting to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's very simple. It's launch product. Yeah, you just have to keep launching, right? To me, it's not about how well your launch goes, but just the fact that you're able to launch. So a PM job is an execution job. You have to get it done. It's not about sitting in rooms and just talking all the time. It's not about conference calls. It's not about, it's not about coordination. All of that, leave it to your program manager, leave it to your project manager. Your job is to make sure that whatever needs to happen to get version out needs to happen. I think it was Reid Hoffman, founder of PayPal and LinkedIn, who said, if you've never seen a product fail on launch, then you're launching late. So if your product is working fine when you launch, then you've missed the market. So you need to launch fast. You need to launch, and you need to launch a good product. You need to do what you need to do to get it right. But it's about being able to get it to market.
Got it. So I think the question was also centered around, suppose you have launched the product, how do you then measure the success or failure of the product? Do you define it at the beginning of the product, or do you figure that out as you go along?
No, your metrics for success need to be defined as part of your product plan. So what you need, what are you looking to do out of this product? What is success? Is it adoption? Is it usage? Is it completion? What product are you building? And who is your user? You need to define that. Is your user an internal team? Are you building a tool that is going to be adopted by somebody else in your own company? Is it going to be used by a developer? Is it going to be used by a merchant? Who is your ultimate user for your tool or for your product? And what is their measure of using it? Is it that if you're building a dashboard, then your success metric is that people look at the dashboard at a particular frequency. So if you're putting a daily report out, you're updating your dashboard on a daily basis, and you're pushing metrics onto your dashboard, then your metric has to be that, hey, my dashboard is relevant enough that everybody's looking at it every day. So you need to figure out what tool you're building, who the target user is, what is the frequency at which it makes sense for this person to use your product, and then set your metrics based on that.
Got it. Got it. I think for now we can end the Q&A session for this one. But if we have more time remaining at the end, we
I
can.
just have one question. We just finish off with this. So Pallavi, as people have started working from home due to coronavirus and other stuff, I was just curious to know, has the productivity taken a hit at PayPal?
No, not at all.
Okay,
Not
so
at all.
got it. So this basically validates saying that people can work anywhere.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter where they are. Cool.
doesn't matter. I have in the last, how many years has it been? At least 5-6 years, I have never had a completely co-located team. I have always had teams who are virtual, who are remote. And so there's always 1 or 2 people who are working at night. Invariably the time zones are such that it's either early morning for them or late in the evening for them. And so people are working from home. I have never, that has not been the problem for productivity. To me, the problem of productivity is motivation. If your team is motivated enough, if they're bought into the idea that you guys are doing a good job, right? And to me, that's the job of a product manager. Okay? You have to hold the team together. You have to involve everybody. Everybody needs to have a sense of ownership. They need to have the sense that they are playing a role critical towards the creation of the product. If each person needs to be respected for what they bring to the table. It could be the junior most engineer who's been tasked with writing, QA automation. Okay, it could be a new designer who's using pre-existing templates and filling something out. Could be something, it could be, a senior person who's just coming in and reviewing and providing sign off. Okay? It doesn't matter what role the person plays. If they are part of the team, it is the job of the product manager to ensure that each of them understand the role they play, are acknowledged and respected for what they bring to the table, and that they are aware of when they need to play their role, right? So, and this is where the project manager's role comes in as well, that they are able to manage this effectively, and the product manager is able to empower each of these people with the information that each of them need in order to play the role that they have to play effectively, and that the product comes together and is a good quality output that can go into the market. And for this, it doesn't matter where people sit, that they can be sitting next to you and be watching YouTube, and it doesn't matter, right? It's about motivation, it's about commitment, and it's about pride in the work that you do and in that you create a good quality output. That attention to detail and the consciousness that you need to create a good product is what matters. And that's what I look for when I put my team together.
Cool. I think great answer, Pallavi. Alan, I hope that answers your question. And I think we all believe that as we move along, working from home might become a common trend, and productivity should not get harmed. But we definitely need to take measures to ensure that it stays intact. And just to wrap up the session, I really loved the way you went from a 30,000 feet view and then deep dived into the daily specifics into what a product manager does. A couple of great questions that we had, and you answered them brilliantly. So thanks a lot, Pallavi. Thanks everyone for asking the questions as well. We'll move on to the next session right now. We'll be talking about how to discover product problems from a fintech and landing perspective. And since fintech is a hot space right now in India, especially, and a lot of startups are coming up with new solutions to age-old problems that we have. For today's session, we have Abhishek Kothari with us. He's a co-founder at Flexiloans, and has a lot of experience building consumer products. And being a founder, he can bring in a lot more perspective on how to think about products and how to discover problems that we have. So I think, Abhishek, over to you. Abhishek, you're on mute, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction. Pallavi, thanks for such a great start to the session. Some really valuable insights in terms of how to kind of embark upon the journey of a PM and what does a day for a PM look like. So what I'm going to do, guys, is take you through a little bit of my journey in terms of how we built fintech products, and particularly around pitfalls, things that you should be aware of. A lot of great questions have been asked. I'll try to pitch in wherever necessary in terms of my perspectives around those. As you've done rightly, please keep the questions rolling, and the conversation is for more fun when you're asking questions. So with that, let's start. Can you see my slide?
Yes, yes, Abhishek.
Okay, okay. So uh, first of all, I mean, this is the fintech landscape today, which is existent in India. And this was created about 3 months ago. And so there have been about 5 more companies that have been added to this list. So there is an incredible level of activity that is happening in this space. And I don't know how many of you follow fintech, but broadly, it will classify into categories like payments, where you see companies like Paytm, all the QR code based companies, all the POS based companies like mSwipe, including PayPal, who are in the cross border transactions piece. The second pillar would be lending, where companies like us exist. And the third is wealth management, where you would see a lot of robo advisory companies coming up. And then there is kind of ancillary services that where a lot of service providers will sit. Companies like IDFI and SignZ, who would provide services in the form of products, kind of bundled as a product to fintechs like us. So the space is getting pretty exciting, and I thought I'll spend time today with you guys in terms of explaining what is happening and what are the things that we do to develop a world-class product in India. Okay, a quick background about myself. So I graduated from IIT Bombay in 2005, and I've primarily all my life done data science. So feel free to ask me any questions related to data science as well. Analytics, I mean, back when we started, it was called reporting and analytics, and then it started started getting into modeling and predictive modeling space, and then eventually the term data science came in, and now everybody's a data scientist. In my journey, I have done data science. I've done a bunch of things around building products, and also both on the B2B and the B2C side. At Flexiloans, what we're trying to do is building basically a fully automated lending solution. So today, it takes our days and weeks for someone to get a loan. We want to make it real-time exercise, but for small businesses. In the consumer space, that's a problem that has been fairly solved with these. But in the SME space, when you think of a Kirana store or the pharmacy store next door, how do they get money? How do they borrow capital for their growth is something where they struggle a lot. And that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to solve that problem. So what is fintech? I mean, Pallavi touched upon this in terms of every industry being disrupted by technology. And you've seen edutech, you've seen a bunch of other food tech disruptions that have happened. Today, finance is being disrupted through various forms and shapes in terms of payments, lending, etc. But it's on the outside, it looks like it's just that. But when you drill deeper into it, you see that there is actually a lot of product play in it. It is not just the financial product, but the technology product that's coming in. And then who you have to lend to is essentially a problem of understanding the customer. So a lot of data science and predictive modeling and risk assessments and behaviors and cognitive intelligence starts to come in. It's also a risk problem. It's not about just selling something, it's about getting your money back. So it's a credit risk problem. Um, Typically, it's a regulated environment. RBI mandates what to do and not to do. So it's not as green space in other industries. And so compliance is an important angle to keep in mind. There's a lot of operations. What you do as at a front end for the customer is very different from what you do in the back end in order to service that aspect. And so operations is a big part. And then of course people don't pay your money back, and so you have to do collections. And so now think of this, that when you're becoming a product manager for a company in this space, it's not just about technology. It's about all of the angles that kind of form the boundary of what is it that you would need to do on a day-to-day basis. And I'll cover some of these in detail as we go along. But this should kind of anchor the conversation to the fact that it's not about building a tech product, it's about solving a problem. And we built a lot of, and I see that one of the things that it also goes into a couple of questions that were asked earlier, that how do you measure the success of a PM? When do you set up those success criteria? How do you even know that you're a product manager or a product manager? So the most important thing that I think a product manager needs to have is a vision. What is it that you're trying to solve? Because without that, you put together a piece of software with a little bit of experience on top of it, which may or may not be solving anybody's problem. So in our case, for example, today it takes about 15 to 20 days for a businessman to get a loan, and only 5% of them get a loan. Where we want to get to is that we want to make it a real-time experience. So we want to convert the borrowing experience into a buying experience, where they come to our platform and get a loan, and 90% of them should get a loan and not 5% as what it happens today. So having a product vision is extremely important. I would also highly recommend a framework called OKRs, which all of you should read. I'll also mention this in the chat somewhere there's a book called Measure What Matters. It's a book written by John Doerr, and that book essentially covers about the fact that how do you align your entire product organization towards something that is common? Very often you will see, and I'm sure all of you work in various organizations where you will see that team A and team B has different objectives. And that is where the first defeat of a product manager starts to happen. Because if a product function cannot align everybody into the same direction, then it would mean that you're building different products for different outcomes. And those outcomes will not necessarily lead to the solved problem that you're trying to solve. So it's a very simple concept, objectives and key results. I suggest each and every one of you to read that book. It'll give you a perspective. It's a book that it's a framework that Intent started, and Google follows, and Google is the champion for that. Now, at least in India, there are a few companies that follow it. Right from day one, when we started Flexiloans, we had the ambition to onboard the OKR framework. In the last 2 years, we've done that, and it shows some phenomenal results. So as a product manager, have a vision. It could be as simple. So for example, if I tell you about how do we go about trying to find our customers' problem. The second most important thing when you define your vision is to not define a vision or a problem basis what you think sitting in the boardroom. It's about what is it that you are going to do, solve for the customer. So more often than not, what you will get is a list of features that your stakeholders would want to build. And it could be a list of features that would make their life easier. It could be something that they feel is going to be important for the customer. But there is no shortcut to product discovery. I'm going to spend a few minutes here because this is where I think most product managers don't realize the importance of continuous discovery. When you're solving a problem, you will not know the extent of the problem until you start peeling the onion. So it is a very iterative process. Google this, you will find a bunch of literature on continuous discovery. It's a very simple concept which talks about you discovering, which is simply having customer interactions. A good product manager or the most awesome product managers speak to their customers on a weekly basis. They need to know what's happening and what is their customer thinking, using, not using, doing, what is happening in the industry. Because you will realize that the market shifts far, far faster than what your product will be, unless you speak to the customer. And I absolutely believe in what I've written below, that if you forget the customer at speed X, the customer is going to forget you at speed 2X. And so remember the customer, discover, which is speak to them, and then apply your problem solving skills to ideate on that. There is the continuous discovery process gives you a lot of frameworks around using post-its, having a broad spectrum in terms of solutions, and then narrowing it down. Create those products, deliver it. When you deliver it, you need to see the impact of it. And as we said, because there will be a product vision that you've already set, you'll be able to measure that. Some tools that a product manager should always have open on their laptop is things like Google Analytics. If you are working on an online facing product, you should have bunch of data around interactions with the customers in terms of where they're dropping off in the funnel, which either Google Analytics or any of the click metrics data can give you. You should have good understanding of SQL, because, and I'm using SQL as a generic way to tell you that you should be able to query data. Because if you can't get data by yourself and you're dependent on someone else to give data to you, then you're dependent on someone else for your success. So before you even think about becoming a product manager, learn Google Analytics and the related tools, learn SQL and a bunch of other tools that you would use to query data. Learn to articulate in terms of good presentations succinctly. Learn to have very pointed conversations with your customers in order to understand their problem. Jeff Bezos says this frequently, that if the customer has basically outsourced the innovation to the product manager. So as a product manager, you are asking the right questions, and hence you're going to get the right answers. Customer doesn't know really what they want until you tell them the power of impossible. So make sure you again have good design thinking and research experience, maybe even theoretical. You don't need to work in a research company to understand how to speak to customers and how to do effective workshops. There are a bunch of agencies and people that are skilled for that. But as you get into that middle ground of being a product manager who understands UX and who understands customer, then you would need to speak to the customer, and that powerful interaction should happen in a way that is more disciplined in nature. So make sure that you understand that. One framework that I really like about discovery is a double diamond framework. Again, read about it. The double diamond framework is effectively a divergent, convergent, divergent, convergent kind of framework. Notice the first the two lines on the top. First of all, you have to solve the right problem. A lot of product managers get, including what we do in fintech, get kind of emotional about what they think will work. So solve the right problem. Don't get, you have passionate about it, but at the same time, you don't want to, what you say is going to be built by a bunch of engineers, tested by a bunch of QAs, used by a bunch of consumers. And then when it fails, it effectively is a massive, colossal loss. And hence solve the right problem. We'll also talk about, of course, you can't solve the right problem on day one. So how do you take the MVP approach? But you solve the right problem, and then you solve the problem right, which is once you've identified the right problem, then you focus on the solution bit. Now on the bit, this is my favorite part. So as a product manager, what I've enjoyed always is the ability to bring a few good problem solvers into the room. And a product manager is a problem solver. And vice versa is also true. A problem solver can always become a product manager with the right tool sets, but a product manager has to be a problem solver. So you bring people into a room and you ask them a question which is as vague as, what do SMEs want when they borrow money from a bank? Okay, and you will get questions which is, and you then go wide in terms of solutions. The simplest ones would be they want money at the cheapest rate, they want money fast. But those are obvious ones. Everybody knows that. As you start brainstorming, you will realize, no, they actually want to trust the lender. They don't trust the fact that the lender will actually apply the right fees at the end of the month, or will they be overcharged because they've been burnt. They've been charged with credit card interest rates in the past. Then they would want that, okay, I want some kind of a personalization because my needs are different. Then as you go forward, you will notice the behavioral aspects coming in and solutions around it, etc. And then you will realize probably that actually, you know what, rate is not the most important factor. They don't care about rate, they care about other things more. So that's, so you go divergent in terms of your problem identification, and then you converge, which is a typical road mapping exercise where you use tools like Jira. You have a backlog, you prioritize the right ideas to build your MVP. Once you build your MVP, then you go divergent again, depending on what you've learned from that MVP, and then you converge again to select the right solutions basis your learning, and then this becomes an iterative cycle in terms of solution. This is what I very kind of nicely read somewhere. This is procedural justice as a product manager. So as a product manager, you have a lot of powers, right? You effectively have the power to solve the problem. And with those powers come a lot of responsibilities. And so you need to do justice to the process. And this is a good framework I like. This is what we use at Flexiloans. Okay. I'm just going to just show you one more thing which will make sense about the customer, and then we'll take a pause. This is what I was saying. We kind of see that this world is divided into four parts when it comes to lending. There is those price sensitive customers who want lowest rate. There is those amount sensitive customers who want money for a specific reason. I want to take a dealership of a company and I need to have 50 lakhs of capital to get that dealership. Now I'm amount sensitive. I need 50 lakh. If you give me 20 lakh at a very attractive rate, it doesn't solve my problem. And so I'm amount sensitive. There are a lot of guys who are now in the bottom two quadrants, which is time and experience sensitive, which they didn't know earlier. So when we started the company 3.5 years ago, people were price and amount sensitive, and maybe some bit of them were time sensitive. But then we started giving them really good experiences. And then you see that time and experience sensitive people are expanding at a rate faster than what you can imagine. And that's where technology and product starts to play a role, because product and technology may not on day one be able to give the right amount or the right price, because that's a risk decision. But the time and experience is something that a product manager can completely control. And that's why if you go back to the product vision, our product vision is that we want to basically give money in the same session, which is time and experience. We will save time for you, we will give you great experience, and we hope that you, for that, you are able to accept a higher price from us. So I'll take a pause here because for most of you who are either entering product management or are product managers, you should have a lot of questions around the customer's part. How do you do product discovery and how do you understand your customers? I'm also happy to listen or get some thoughts in terms of how you do at your current organizations today.
Abhishek, I think there was a question a couple of minutes back. I'll just share that question with you. So Anand asks, this is slightly related to like fintech and not something related to product management in general. So he asks, when it comes to an automated credit assessment, what is the error of margin and how does it fare against manual assessment?
Credit assessment is a science in itself. Basically, think about it this way. When how does a borrower get money from a lender today? They, of course, there are the usual suspects like bureau and your banking history to see your cash flows, etc. Now, when a manual assessment happens, you're manually analyzing these data points, which may or may not be machine readable, but you can assume that you could put a bank statement into an Excel file and analyze it. So I'm still going to call it automated. So manual with a little bit of automation. But can you find out the final inputs into a bank statement, which is, for example, what is the standard deviation from the balance that the customer keeps in their account to within their month? So in a month of 1 to 30, when their balance fluctuates, what's the standard deviation? Now that's very difficult to calculate for a manual assessment. what we see is that's a great input, because higher the standard deviation, higher is your variability in your balances, higher is your desperation for credit, and lower is the chance that you'll be able to pay the money back at a specific point of time because you don't have a consistent cash flow. So there is one part of manual versus automated, which is just using more maths to be able to come up with better predictors. Now let's take it to really extreme, and I'll cover some of that later, but because there's a question right now, translate that to not just data, but to text, to images, to voice. When a credit officer of a bank speaks to a borrower, their cognitive intelligence is basically telling them that this customer is lying or not lying, or are they thorough with their business or not thorough with their business, or know enough about their business, or do they have enough documentation, do they really need a loan or not. So they assess all of this, which is your brain working to be able to make a subjective assessment using voice calls, using images of your shop. So using voice calls, I can do all of that. We can use voice calls to act as a lie detector. Basis the tonality, basis the pauses, basis the same question being answered in different ways, I can effectively tell you whether what is the consistency of the responses and whether the customer is saying the truth or lying. Okay? Take it to image. Um, today, with an image being clicked of a shop, I can predict the length, width, and depth of a shop. So I can figure out what's the size of the shop using lat long and data from real estate sites like housing.com. I can figure out what is the price of that shop, so I can see whether it's affluent or not. I can take a look at the stock of the in the image and predict what is the object, which is what are they selling, and what is the effective price of that stock. I can using image recognition and computer vision find out whether there's a computer in the shop, what is the amount of furniture and free space in the shop, what is the lighting in the shop. So now you are taking it to an extreme level where it is no longer about the traditional credit assessment. It's about understanding the customer in a far better way than what a typical credit assessment would do. So it now wraps itself into AI, which a typical manual assessment will not be able to do. So those are the two ends. Look at some pages and do an assessment versus let the machine do using thousands of data points that it will figure out using text, voice, image, and of course the standard factors.
Got it. I think super interesting the analogy around images and audio, because it boils down to that eventually. So that was pretty helpful. I think there is another question from Suhas on how do you segment this segment customer quantitatively into each of these buckets. So maybe price sensitive, amount sensitive, time and experience. How do you quantitatively segment your customers into these buckets?
Typically, it's the exercise where it has not been done before is some bit of research and data collection. You would have a survey sent to the customers asking questions, which would eventually not be direct questions like these, but lead to outcomes where we could infer them. We also, because we are a higher priced fintech than banks, we lose customers who don't take our offer because they're price sensitive. So we know approximately what percentage of market is not taking our offer because of the price, because of the amount. There are customers who prefer to do everything on a website or an application, who are more experience sensitive, even though when we call them, they prefer to do it on an app. And there are customers who want money quickly, which is what they indicate through research and surveys. So it's a process which you will get to by doing research and having right interventions into your product. So ask surveys, have interventions in your product where you ask those questions. Spend money. You'd have to hire an agency who can go and speak to these SMEs and figure out and ask these questions. So it's not it's something that you would have to invest in to understand what is the quantitative size of these segments.
Got it. Got it. Thanks for answering that. We have one more question.
Yes. So when it came to analytics, which channel did the customers prefer the most to pay back their loans? When you just qualify that question, which channel to pay back their loans, as in cash versus bank transfers? Got it. So we don't do cash collections. As a company, we think that a customer should be rewarded for doing digital transactions, and so we don't do cash collection. So a customer has only three ways to pay money back. One is they give us a check, which we would deposit in their bank account to get money. Second is an automatic mandate, or third is a UPI transfer. There's no other way. Or they could, of course, transfer money themselves using an IMPS and an EFT. What we see is it's almost what you, if you, and any of you have ever taken a loan or an education loan, the EMI gets deducted from your bank account automatically, which is called a mandate. It's basically an electronic mandate that gets presented. So you customers give us the right to pull EMI from their bank account every month, which is what we do. That is the most prevalent aspect. 95% of customers pay using that. When you had to rope in time and experience sensitive customers, was there an impact on pricing? Time and experience sensitive customers are those customers who are willing to pay extra for saving time and better experience. So naturally we price high. We know that it's the same thing as what Uber does to you, right? They're giving you a trusted service, which is timely and a good experience. And that is always going to be more expensive than a Kali Pili that you would take in Bombay. But you do that every day because and then of course we price in the experience and we price in the time. For us, it's about then how do you capitalize that product into value. So experience, for example, you want money today, you could a good example of experience would be that if you finish your entire journey on a mobile application, then you get money the same day. And that kind of an experience is something that some customers would appreciate. But the downside is those customers cannot get more than X amount because the risk is very high. So a customer makes a choice that, okay, I'm going to live with a 3 lakh rupee loan, but I'm going to get it today, now on the app. And so that's the balance the customer is doing. And for that automated loan, we are going to charge a little bit extra. So what we've done is we've priced it and we've also contained risk. And then, of course, the machine learning models will start learning on that behavior and keep improving the risk algorithms. How many customers actually value experience over price? Just to give you some numbers, our prices are transparent on our website. We charge 1% to 2% per month. About 1.5 lakh SMEs apply on our website every month. Okay, so assuming some of them may not have gone through the website or may have missed that, even if you take a 30% haircut on that, you're talking about a 1 lakh SMEs every month looking for a loan. Look, I should have given you some numbers. There are about 6 crore SMEs in India. 6 crore. Okay, 6 crore SMEs, and only about 50 lakh SMEs have about 10% of them or 15% of them have taken an unsecured business loan from a bank. The rest 90% have taken money from their local money lenders, friends or family, where the price could be much higher, the experience could be very bad, and of course as families are becoming nuclear, friends are becoming more social friends, it is difficult to borrow from community, and hence platforms like us cater to these. So you're talking about 90% of Indian SMEs who wants this service. So this is a very, very, very large segment who is willing to pay a higher price than bank but get money. How does one identify customers with minimum needs, and how does anyone that needs a genuine without manual intervention? Again, research. How can you know about customer needs without talking to the customer? Of course, MVP is a good approach in terms of as we go along. I'll talk about the MVP approach, and then we will cover this question there. There's nothing like genuine needs without manual intervention. You will get to know as you do an iterative process around product. Every need is genuine. It's only about, as a product company, are you willing to solve it today, or because of the value to cost ratio that you see, versus you're going to solve it. Google did not start doing voice recognition when they started. They started doing voice recognition when they had enough data and they could do good problem solving on it. Whereas, of course, we needed voice recognition 2 years ago also. So it's a call that companies take basis value to cost ratios. We'll hold off to the question of recovery of bad debt. We'll kind of cover that at the last slide because that's I'm glad somebody asked because a lot of people forget that. Just to move on in the conversation, a product manager is going to face this every day in their life, which is it's a man versus machine problem. You're effectively going to build products to solve customer problems, but you're also building products to disrupt what people do today. So how do you handle that is again a skill that is very important. It's a read about change management. Read about how good product managers, or even not product managers, leaders who have to bring about change, handle that. It starts from the top. It's about setting the right vision, doing enough workshops with your stakeholders, explaining the value to them, and then being able to translate all of that into a product roadmap. But each one of you, when you become a product manager, you will see that it's a daily challenge of man versus machine. When you try to automate something, you will face resistance because what you're automating is going to lead to somebody's role being shifted, and hence you will want them on your side in terms of explaining what they do. So it's something that you will come across. The fourth, and I think this is my favorite, that as a as a product manager community, we are going to be limited by our own imagination. Um, Look at these things. 3 years ago, they were all fiction. Okay, uh, uh, armors, voice control devices, wireless charging, biochips, wearables, 3D printers. 5 years ago, none of that existed. You know, if you remember some of the movies, there were movies that spoke about space travel back in 1929, and the first time the Sputnik was launched was in 1957 when Russia launched it. It took 28 years for that fiction to become fact. If you look at Space Odyssey, the movie that came, it came in 2001. 2010 is when iPad was released. Pallavi had this image as well. If you look at Minority Reports, came in 2002, but the gesture controlled Xbox Kinect came in 2009. So if you look at it, the distance between imagination and reality is shrinking very, very fast. Okay, so there are times when you think about something that could be done, and 6 months later you would see that as a reality. US Army is using armors for their SEAL team. We have Alexas and homes, Google Homes at our workplaces or homes. People are using biochips. 3D printing is a reality. People are printing things on moon using 3D printers. So imagine the combination of these technologies. And so, as a product manager, you will be limited by your own imagination. So whatever you think can expand your imagination. And this is where I'm going to go a little bit philosophical. You can travel, you can read books, you can keep talking to each other. There's no better way to kind of do a good imagination exercise than to brainstorm. A few of you huddle together, think about problems. Today, India has a massive problem on parking. India has a massive problem on traffic jams. While you may not be solving that as a product manager, when you have a brilliant discussion around it, your thought process expands. And then as technology evangelists, then you start plugging technology to solve that problem. So read books where a lot of leaders, and especially follow people like Andrew Ng, who are evangelists on data science and AI, and how they're thinking about solving problems in a different way, how communities have come together to solve coronavirus. There is a lot of things that you could do, but keep imagining. That is going to be your biggest failure as a product manager if you cannot imagine. Because somebody can do the technology, somebody can do the road mapping, somebody can do the process, somebody can do the product discovery. But if you can't imagine, then you can't build new products. Okay, I'm going to speed up a little bit because I think I'm going to otherwise shoot over scheduled time. As a product manager, don't think always about technology. As a company, we are solving the problem of lending. When my father asks me, "कि तुम करते क्या हो?" And eventually I try to explain everything, and then you say, "अच्छा loan देते हो ना? तो loan देते हो तो recovery कैसी चल रही है?" And those are the two questions. So it's extremely manual intensive exercise. If I were to throw all the technology at it to solve it, we probably not even launch for another 5 years. So it is effectively about human intelligence, which is there are people who know about how to do loans, how to do good loans, how to recover them. Use that. Don't try to replicate everything with a product. Use machine intelligence, because because that's where a lot of automation, robotic processes, AI, machine learning will all come in. And then I think what the third part which most product managers again is the process innovation part. When you're solving a problem, you also have to not just automate the process, but also eliminate the process sometimes. And so process innovation is again something you should read. Read about Lean and Six Sigma principles. That will allow you to not just be a good product manager, but also become a good product leader. Because at some point, you're not just going to be managing a part of a product, but also managing the P&L of that product, becoming the CEO of that product. And that's where all of these things start coming in. So read about Lean and Six Sigma principles. You all must have read about it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But I think nobody in India does proper agile. Agile is a concept that is purely brutally misused. So in whatever form and shape you can do it, just do a pure form of agile. It's not about I will do what I think about it today, and that's called agile. It's about having a proper stand-up process, having a daily review process, documentation of codes, process of quality check processes, MVPs. All of that put together makes it agile, and not just the fact that we will not have a long-term vision. We will keep building every day, and because we're building every day, we are agile. So that's the wrong concept of agile, and hence you should just make sure that all of you read about proper agile, and that's when you become good product managers. Some of the trainings that you should take is Scrum trainings. Scrum trainings are good. You may not need to become a Scrum master, but you will appreciate what a Scrum process does. So again, start reading about those things. Build an MVP. This is about the wrong way of agile and the right way of agile. So the first part is when you start, yeah, we're going to need wheels. So let's, my product vision is set that I need to build a car, but those are the two ways you could build a car. You build one wheel, you need the second wheel, then you build the body, which is the typical software development cycle. But then you could actually take the route below, which is you could start with something that works, which solves the problem. Because you're not building a car, you're solving the problem of faster transportation. So if in the below, you're actually solving faster transportation by one also. When you get to two, you solve another problem of faster transportation with good safety. And then in three, you do faster transportation with less labor than what it was in one and two. In four, you make it faster and faster. In five, you make it faster, smoother, better, faster, cheaper, everything. And so, but you solve the problem every time, and so you will never go wrong. So that kind of an MVP approach, where you don't have to rebuild things, is something that you would have to always keep in mind. Okay, this is just a little bit of humor. You will be distracted every day. We get distracted every day. We get distracted with what our vision is building. We get distracted with what leaders would think. So as product managers, some of the product leaders and CEOs will basically read about something and say that, okay, this is a good PR opportunity. Let me just do it. So why don't you now do blockchain? But does blockchain really solve a lending problem? And that's something that a call that a product manager has to take. So you can't just be swayed by distractions. Okay, you should know everything. So not to be distracted, it can only happen once you know what everything does. So if you know blockchain, if you know what you're trying to solve, then you will easily be able to say that, hey, blockchain doesn't solve lending problem, because the lending problem today is about time and experience. It's less about creating a trusted ecosystem with multi-party system in it. So blockchain is not the solution, but I'm going to continue with my product vision. And second is, of course, I am a big fan of Jeff Bezos. So don't build product by what your competition is doing. Have your own vision. Do what you think is going to solve the problem and add more value. This is again something that you would face on a day-to-day basis. Use advanced technologies. Don't be limited by software. Okay, a product manager today is incomplete without an understanding of data science, and I can't emphasize on this enough. If you don't know the power of advanced algorithms, and you don't need to code it, you don't need to write it, you don't need to even know how to hire a data scientist or be a data scientist, but you should know the power of data science, because once you know that, then you're going to be an excellent product manager. And that's where a lot of specialization comes in. This is generalization, right? There was a question earlier that generalist versus specialist. You have to be a generalist when it comes to all the tools and skill sets, and then you have to specialist in terms of the problem they're solving. If you can solve the problem in a better, and the way to specialization is through, again, the double diamond framework. You know everything, and then you're going to channel all of that into a problem, and that's when somebody is going to pay you a 1 crore salary, because you are going to solve that problem better than anyone else, because you know all the applications and the tool sets that are going to go into solving that problem. And the last bit, be a good business guy. Don't just be a product manager. A product manager sometimes gets isolated into technology product manager, but as a good product manager, even at Flexiloans, I encourage all of my product managers to actually understand business. It's not about giving money, it's about also collecting money. So if you're building tech for giving out money, what are you doing for recovery? What are the ways in which customers find it easy to recover, to pay money back? Otherwise, you're not going to have a network across the country to go knock the doors and collect the money. So can you do repayments through UPI? Can you do a good reminder service? Can you do e-mandates through a user experience which is better than a physical collection? And all of those things start coming in. So those were my 10 key learnings from building products at Flexiloans. I am going to just again take a pause and also check the time if we have already overrun. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to.
Guys, I think please go on mute and
Yeah, somebody still remembers recovery. So look, in India, recovery is a so when a person doesn't want to pay the money back, then no matter how much of digital means you throw at them, they don't want to pay the money back. So there are two types of recovery issues. One is an intent, one is an ability. Okay, and my favorite is discipline. So there are three types of issues: intent, ability, and discipline. Discipline is what you can solve through product, where you can do a good reminder service. You can tell them that if they don't pay back, then their bureau scores get impacted and for all of that. So a large part of our recovery happens through showing the power of discipline through product to customers, and then of course aligning it with easy ways to repay. This is about 95% of customers, because if you do a proper risk selection at the start, then you're not looking at a scenario where 50% of your customers are not paying back. The remaining 5 to 7% customers who have the issue around ability or intent is where you are, the ability part can again be restructured partially to product, but not a tech product. It's a financial product, which is, hey, I have run into some losses, or I have some exigency due to which I need to restructure my loan. So we would give them offers in terms of restructuring loans. The third part is intent, which can only be solved through coercion and physical visits. So you'd have to go and visit and knock the door. I have a framework around it. It's called DOSE, danger of social embarrassment. So that's how you recover money. You go and sit at their shop, and then you keep asking for your money back. And at some point they'll realize that you're not going to leave until you get your money back, and that's what the social embarrassment factor in India works. So there are many methods we are also learning, but those are the three big ones. Numbers for what, Suhas?
Numbers basically on the lines of how many, especially since you're playing in the 90% market, unsecured loans, how many of them are you actually facing trouble from recovering these loans, or are you currently facing, if you are currently facing that problem, what are some numbers around this?
So I won't give out numbers in terms of NPAs, etc., purely because that's a different conversation altogether. Typically you would see that in Indian market, an unsecured loan carries a portfolio risk of anywhere between 2% to 7-8%. That's the range everybody plays in. The trick is not in avoiding risk. The trick is in pricing the risk. So the question that a good product manager should be asking is, if it's only 8%, why can't we charge 8% extra to everyone and then cover that loss? Right? And so it's about the fact that can I identify that cohort of customers who are moderate risk, but on a pool of customers, if I'm going to see percent additional risk, I will charge them 5% additional interest, and then I'm still going to be net positive. So the trick in lending is not about always avoiding the risk, but many a times pricing the risk.
Got it. Thanks.
So Abhishek, just to add, so here you're going to charge more to the customers who are mid-risk or high risk.
As I said, three categories of risk: risks that you should take, risks that you should price, and that you should avoid. Avoid is the one that you should avoid because it could be diarrhea. You can't control it. You are anticipating a 30% risk, but it could become 50. You don't have control. Priceable risk is when you're looking at a single digit risk range where you price it, where you price all of them 5% extra because they are moderate risk. And the risk that you should take is essentially good customers who have no intent or ability to default in cases their past behavior. Some percent of them will, but that's when you don't have to price that risk. It is bundled into your product. I'm just going to read out a couple of more questions here. As a PM, it's important to adapt and learn. How do you learn the right way? That's a question that I keep asking myself because if you don't learn, then you become extinct, right? So a few things that I've really liked in terms of as my product management journey is some of the podcasts. So you could listen to some of the podcasts about masters of scale kind of ones, which give you a good perspective around how really good product leaders have built companies. Second is reading, whichever space you're interested in. There's always a space where you could read about stuff. And so you will find less content about product. You will find more content about businesses and innovation. So don't limit yourself to what you're reading in terms of how to become a good product manager. You don't become a good product manager by reading. You become a good product manager by practicing and solving. But to practice and solve, you have to know what to solve and what are the problems that are existing. So just keep reading. So read books, good books, which are written by product leaders. Listen to podcasts and blogs like I think Medici. Let's Talk Payments is a good podcast. A good blog, and there are a bunch of other things for different industries. Pricing along with product journey is an interesting one. It's a constant learning. You keep pricing, you keep learning the risk, and then you keep adjusting the price. It's a very fast-paced pricing environment. Yes, links of podcasts. I will definitely send it later to the product folks guys, and they can put it here. Master of Scale is a good one. Okay, guys, the only other thing I wanted to, while you keep the questions going, the only other thing I wanted to kind of highlight to you guys as product managers is, of course, there's product market fits, etc. Indian product managers, most of them kind of lack the understanding of the fact that they're building the product for a market, and it should fit that market, and it should solve a problem for a customer. We've spent enough time on it, but please don't start building products without realizing the importance. And you should be able to tell me in 1 or 2 sentences that whose problem are you solving and what will their life be after your product. Okay, size your market carefully. Okay, many a times India is a large country, right? Everybody thinks there's billions of people, but from the bottom of the slide, what you will see is 90% is underserved. But as you get to a point that how many of them are reachable, about 30% are not reachable because we are a digital company and they're still not digital. And some of them are happy with their current local money borrowing process. So they don't need your product. And then there are some who are not willing to pay for your product, the ones who are price sensitive. So your actual market size may be much smaller than what you think today. It's still going to be a very sizable segment. But as a product manager, you need to know that what is the scale of your product. You can't go out in the market and then be caught by surprise because nobody's buying your product. Okay, this is just a summary. This is my end game from a lending perspective. Okay, ideally, a customer should only be able to tell me what is their requirement. That's it. They should just put in 5 lakh rupees, and that's it. I should be able to, my product should be able to do the identity and location verification through GPS, Aadhaar, secondary data, images on the phone. Reference validation should happen through contacts and social media. I should be able to use SMS and their GST returns or banking, which can be recreated through SMSs for their financial risk metrics. I should be able to access their call logs, contacts, and social media to understand the social and business context in terms of their growth and scale. And then I should be able to just tell them whether they can get 5 lakhs or they cannot get 5 lakhs or they can get 3 lakhs. And that's it. So, but that's the kind of, you're talking about a fully connected system where GSTs and Aadhaar and phone contacts and SMSs and internet banking has all come into one single layer where I can access it. We're still many years away from that. China is kind of slowly getting to that. We will get to that. But that is my product vision, is that we don't need to ask the customer anything. We can just offer them loans.
Abhishek, just one thing to add on the slide. So, don't you think this will raise concerns about data privacy a lot?
Great question. And of course, nothing is above law. So while there is a huge kind of angle of privacy across the world, and I used to be a GDPR consultant back in the days. But what I can tell you is that everything works with consent. So assume for now that customer has given consent for you to access this.
Yeah.
Okay, without consent, and that's why we're not saying that we will just calculate loan eligibility for everyone and just knock their doors and say, hey, here is a loan. We're going to kind of keep it consent driven, but it's a tricky slope. Some of these things, for example, Aadhaar, even with consent driven, can be misused, which we've seen in the past. And so it will not be, and that's what I'm saying. This is the end game. May or may not become reality, but this is my imagination.
Eh, Great, thanks.
I'm just going to read out a couple of more questions. Why are there so many startups in lending space? As I said, because there are 6 crore SMEs, there are 100 crore individuals, and only about 20% of them have ever borrowed from a financial institution. So fintechs are coming in to bridge that gap, which banks could not fulfill. It's still a large market. I think there's space for many more fintechs because just to give you a number, all fintechs combined have given about 2.5 lakh loans out of that 5 crore SME opportunity. Okay, so no, anybody who says there are too many fintechs, I give them this number. There's nothing that has been done so far. Neobanks are still early days. My personal belief is that they're early days in terms of what are they trying to solve? A really flashy, good website where customers can do some things. Axis Bank has a really good internet banking ecosystem. Only about 5% of their users use internet banking. So if an Axis Bank customer does not feel the need to use internet banking, why will they feel that? Why will someone feel the need to go to a neobank, which is built on a similar concept of using internet as a rails to provide a completely digital experience? So my personal belief is that India is still kind of too early for neobanks. And market size for lending in neobanks, there's plenty of literature on that in terms of what is the market size. Government of India publishes the number of SMEs. Government of India publishes the digital payments by category, UPI, NEFT, etc. And then you have the e-commerce register where you know how many are selling online versus not. So you can effectively do a good guesstimate exercise to see that how many of your customers are connected on internet, where you have data from digitally savvy, where you have data from WhatsApp, looking for finance, where you have data from bureaus, and are doing a certain size of business, which you can get from NPCIs and other UPI institutions. So you can put together different data sources to do a good exercise on market. In fact, I'm sure all of you graduated. One of the favorite engineering questions at the time of interviews is about guesstimates, which is calculate the number of hairdressers in Mumbai. And there are multiple approaches to solve that problem. You can do that. And there's if you look for reports on digital lending, you will get a report which is done by Omidyar and BCG. It's a very good report. You should read that if you're interested, particularly in lending. What is the average time to verify? For us, the average time to verify is about a few seconds because the verification is fully automated. We can verify that you are the person who's borrowing using face recognition, APIs with GST, Aadhaar, etc. So that part is automated. A major chunk of product and lending will be, which is not customer facing, risk assessment, document checking, loan. Somebody's, Dhaval, I like this question because it looks like you belong from lending somewhere. Did you break the product in MVP? Some examples. Okay, great. So yes, we did. So we broke it in terms of funnel. We wanted to solve the first part of the funnel that we wanted to solve was because we were never going to have branches. How will the customers access us? So we broke it down into access, assess, and service. So the first problem we solved was how are we going to get in front of the customers and access those SMEs and get a value proposition in front of them. The second part is then assess that when these customers come in, how are we going to risk assess them? And third is then once they've taken a loan, how are we going to service them? So we broke it into kind of like a funnel problem because the access problem was the biggest because without that, we could not even have a customer through the funnel. And then assess and then service. And then today we are at a point where 1 lakh customers apply on our mobile application, 40,000 of them then migrate to a chatbot on WhatsApp, give us documents on chatbot, complete their loan application there, do an e-signature on a mobile web journey, and then click their photographs and do a face verification through a PWA, and then complete their journey, and the money gets transferred to them. So it's, but we broke it down into various MVPs. Purely around the value that one is how do we get started, and second is how do we so for example things like fraud detection, it's only 0.001% of the problem today, so we haven't really solved it. That's on part of our roadmap for the next quarter. What's your view on micro investing? Sorry, I don't know what is micro investing. If by the sound of it looks like micro investing is where why don't we use whoever Gagan, if you can just ask the question on audio rather than on chat.
Sure, Abhishek. So, so just a generic view on it. So I'm nowhere concerned about, nowhere related to lending or something. But if you see US spectrum, so there are a lot of apps like Capital and other things which are involved in a space wherein it's more about a personal success or more about personal goals achievement.
Right.
Yeah. So just I wanted to know your view on that concerning the Indian ecosystem of it.
Right. I mean, I wish there were more people solving this problem. Unfortunately, I mean, India as a demographic is a very savings conscious country. Our goals are limited to roti kapda makan. B are not quantifiable enough because the cost of these goods change very fast. And C, we've been taught to keep money in the bank, cash is king, and so that behavior really disallows the simple concepts of compounding. Right? India does not understand the benefit of compounding. Again, I would urge all of you to read compounding. Okay. A lot of people think मैंने 10 लाख रुपए का फ्लैट लिया था और 10 साल में यार वो 20 लाख रुपए का हो गया. Right? If you put that money in FD, you would probably gain more return. Okay, there are people who and just do simple maths. Shah Rukh Khan ka jo bangla hai na, at that point when he bought it in Bandra versus the cost it is today, it's a stupid investment. So from an investment perspective, we don't understand the power of compounding. We don't understand the power of mutual funds. We don't understand the power of brain is very dumb, right? I mean, if I ask you to do factorials, you can't do that. If I ask you to do logarithmics, you can't do that. So compounding is a concept that people don't understand. Somebody needs to educate India on compounding. Once we are able to do that, then they'll be able to see that SIPs work. Then you have given them a channel. Once they know that a channel exists, then you give them a goal, which is okay. You want to buy, maybe it's a consumption-led goal or an investment-led goal, but you want to buy a car. Okay, if you keep doing this, at some point you'll be able to buy this car. So yeah, there are some companies that are doing that, but not enough. But I don't think it's a tech problem today. It's an awareness issue. And with news like Yes Banks coming in and ILFS crisis happening and banks failing and governments ailing, I think rightly so. Even I feel that I should just keep my money in, not in banks. Yeah, that's just me. Um, do you think banks and NBFCs will also move towards an automated model of credit assessment? Of course, they will. In that case, won't they have advantage because they can access? So how will you differentiate? Right. So as I said, you are underestimating the power of two things. One is early incumbency, which is you built a tech product which is superior than what banks will build over time. So, and this is where the concept of moats come in. Every product manager needs to build a moat. So every business needs to have a moat. So if you are building a product which is only going to be a mobile application which can basically do a straight through processing through a basic simple algorithm, of course banks and NBFCs will beat. But if you created a network of data sources which will allow you to use all of that data to do underwriting, then your power of algorithm compounds. What we will do as Flexiloans is in the next 3 years we would have done about 10 lakh loans. About those 10 lakh loans would have given data sources which is as granular as what is their typing speed on the browser, to what did their SMSs say, to what is their psychometric behavior, to their voice analysis, to the shop photos. Now imagine a bank starting to embark on that journey with me having 10 years of that rich data. So for me, my moat is not the tech automation, it is the data science and the algorithms that sit behind it. And then coupled with the fact that I will have more customer interactions and experiences, which they will take time to understand. So again, going back to that four circles, a bank can today beat me on price, right? They can, because they accept deposits, they have a lower cost of capital. So a part of customers will always be with them who are price sensitive. But I am a significant challenge to them. There's a 90% market who wants money now, who wants a good experience, and banks are not able to service them. But of course, eventually, I don't see banks versus fintechs as I wrote an article on it. Again, if you Google it, what I call is it's not competition. It today feels like competition. It's going to be some bit of collaboration, and then eventually it's going to be consolidation, because it's best of both worlds, right? Think of it from a customer perspective. A customer wants cheap capital fast, so customer wants a bank and fintech combined. So bank may not be able to become a fintech may not be able to become a bank, but there will be consolidation where there will be someone who will emerge and say, this is like a ICICI Flexiloans, HDFC Flexiloans entity, which basically does the best of both worlds. Again, imagination. Hey guys, so I guess if I missed any question, please let me know. Otherwise, I think you guys are running out of questions.
Abhishek, I had one question. So, if someone is not from product domain and does not have prior experience in this area, how do you advise him to transition into the role?
I have 7 product managers. None of them were product managers before I hired them. Okay, so I have a good perspective on it. Okay, I don't think product management. So there are some. Think of this: you're playing poker, and there are some poker stakes, table stakes that you have to kind of do the checklist on, which is you should be analytical in nature. If you can't understand numbers, so I'm going to test you on a simple problem-solving skill which needs quantitative assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you should be curious and creative. Okay, I'm going to give you a puzzle to solve. Okay, so you should be able to think out of the box, be curious about it, tell me a good approach about it. Very standard. Okay, so you should be analytical in nature, because you're going to your job is basically to convert chaos to value, and so you should be able to handle chaos in terms of numbers. Analytical, curious, and then you should be able to be assertive in terms of what is your vision and what is it that you're trying to say. Okay, if you can't articulate properly anything, and it's a simple thing. Why do you think, let's say you have a theory about how you could solve the pollution problem in Delhi? It may be right approach, it may be wrong approach, but can you confidently, assertively tell me that that approach has some validation, has some logic, has some substance to it. And then I think it's just about you getting a title of product manager. Okay. Organizations like us, I mean, you get exposure on that. In 2 weeks, you understand how Jira works. In 3 weeks, you start doing stand-ups. Those are acquired skills. I'm not too worried about your acquired skills. I'm worried about more of your cognitive skills in terms of curiosity, structure, and quantitative. So if you just hone those skills, you will naturally find takers in the market who will say that okay, you are a good problem solver, and then it doesn't matter. You get into a role of a project manager and then move to product manager. You get into a role of a business analyst and then you become a product manager, um, or you just become a product manager. That depends a little bit on your luck and a little bit on the company that's hiring.
True. Thanks a lot. Explains and helps a lot.
Thank you.
Abhishek, I think a lot of the participants are aspiring product managers. I know you gave a lot of like cool links and resources and shared a bunch of podcast names and books. But if there is anything else that you would want to share in terms of resources that these guys should read up on, what would they be?
I look. I don't have a ready list in terms of what I should read up. Unfortunately, I've also been asking that question to myself: that what should I read up every day in the morning so that I become a good product leader? And there is little content. There are, of course, the usual ones which you Google, blogs by Product Hunt, and standard things. But I think it's not about waiting for something to get acquired into yourself to become a product manager. Okay, you first of all you have to answer the question to me that why do you want to become a product manager? Okay, a product manager is a thankless job in many ways, and Pallavi touched upon it a little bit. It's almost like being Batman. Okay, you do all the hard shit, but very few people will recognize. Very few companies will make you CEOs of the companies, because the world works in that way, right? I mean, and I'm talking about it in the Indian context. In the Bay Area context, things would work slightly. So one is, do you want to be a product manager, and why do you want to be a product manager? That is a question that comes with a little bit of introspection. I'm getting a bit philosophical about it, but I think a lot of people think product manager is a sexy job. Because I've been an engineer for far too long, or I've been a designer for far too long, and my only career progression is product manager. Great, that's a good career progression, but you have to be good at it, and to be good at it, you have to be good problem solvers. So if you have been kind of called out as people who have innovative solutions, out of the box thinking, product management kind of solutions, then you are fit to be a product manager. Okay. I was just about to touch on domain knowledge. Somebody asked me a question. So you don't need to have domain knowledge. Okay, you will acquire domain knowledge as you go along. A product manager doesn't need to know fintech before they become a fintech product manager. It's again, as I said, right, going back to the basics, be a good problem solver. And so whatever you need to do to good problem solve, which is first principles thinking, read about first principles thinking, basic logic. Okay, do a lot of brainstorming. I again cannot emphasize enough on the fact that the power of collective mindset is much bigger than one shotu person trying to read everything and learn. I gather more learning from doing brainstorming meetings with my team than what I would read in a month. Um, do read some books. I had one that I had written down. Yeah, there's a book called Hooked by Niriyal. A lot of you would have read that concept already. It's a great book. It's also kind of fundamentally explains how to create habit forming behaviors. While it kind of focuses on habit forming behaviors, it also is a good way to think about how to build a product. So Hooked is a good book that you should read. I've already told you about Measure What Matters. I will again. I look at other books that are that I have come across which are good and send those to you so that you can circulate.
Perfect, perfect. That would be awesome. I've just put down on chat the things you mentioned right now.
A good way to become a product manager is to start thinking about joining startups who are at an early stage where they're just looking for problem solvers. If you're if you're just graduating or transitioning or getting into product management role, what a startup teaches you is going to kind of rocket your learning. So just look at startups who can give you a quick exposure into building tech products. You will learn technologies, you will learn business, you will learn conflict management, you will learn stakeholder management, a lot of things which a very structured product company may not be able to do, because you will then be a part of a big silo. So join startups in any
Perfect.
role.
Makes sense.
Sorry, and what I meant was in any role. Don't think about it as a product management. Any role where you are asked to solve a problem.
Definitely, totally agree. I think early stage startups teach you things from a fundamental level which structured companies might not be able to. So that's a great insight.
In fact, I keep telling that it's because we also don't know. As startup founders, we also don't know what to do. And so we also together. And that's what the fun is. You get to learn, we get to learn. And the compounding effect kicks in because everybody is focused on that same problem.
Exactly. I think we covered all the questions that we had and perfectly on time. So thanks a lot, Abhishek, for like super insightful session. I was constantly taking notes, and I think it was laid down with great tips, advice, and a mix of actual knowledge as well. I think we discussed a lot about fintech and lending in general. It was really interesting to see questions specifically around the domain, and you answer them all. So thanks for that. So just to close the session, I think I would also like to thank like Pallavi and Abhishek both for the time that they took. And Pallavi went broad and talked about future of work. Then Abhishek went deep down into the specifics of the product management, and he brought in a very interesting angle of fintech and lending and answered all your questions. So thank you guys for joining. And before you guys go, I think we have a small surprise for you guys, which Suhas will share. So over to Suhas for that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Adi. And yeah, I'd actually like to call out a couple of efforts in this. I think Adi and Alan organized this, especially like they had a lot of offline things planned, but transition last minute due to coronavirus. So thanks to you guys for organizing. Thanks to the speakers for joining, and thanks to all of you guys for adjusting to this new format. And I hope you guys liked it. Couple of words. I think Abhishek and Pallavi, I think Adi covered most of the things that you guys spoke about. But I think the content for me, I'll be biased about it, but I think it was really good, especially for online delivery. I've been part of a boot camp, a product boot camp earlier from the delivery side. I have seen content from 3 of them. So like I'm being biased about this, but I can say like thank you so much for joining us this morning and this evening there. So thank you again. Thank you so much for that. And we have something we have a surprise for you guys as well, so it'll reach you guys soon. Let's not to reveal
So
too
you're
much
building all
right
the
now.
spends on the surprise.
Yeah, you guys will get it a little later, but yeah,
This is
carrying
this is the
yeah.
hook. This is the hook,
Yeah, this is
Aditya.
Oh, right, yeah. I'm going to now remember you guys for more than
Yeah,
what I did.
this is the hook.
yeah, nice. So and that was one bit of it, and another one is carrying off from what Abhishek just shared. I think this is again something that we planned right very ad hoc right now, but for guys who paid for this event, we will be doing an exclusive session really soon, and this will be something more on the lines of what Abhishek just shared. Where we'll try coming together. We are talking with another platform. It's called Airmeet, where all of us will be getting on and try to pick up a problem, and we'll try to solve it there. So we'll be sharing details with you guys very soon, and hopefully Abhishek and Pallavi will be able to join us for that session as well. But yeah, I mean, we'll keep you guys posted on that. Also, we'll be sharing with all of you all a feedback form. Would love if you guys could fill that. And yeah, let's see what we can do next. So and that's about it from our side. I think unless Aditya or Pallavi or Abhishek, if you guys want to just pitch in. One thing that we request is if there's any way that you guys can share some contact details where people can stay in touch with you, maybe an email ID, maybe LinkedIn, or if you guys have anything to share, for example, if you guys are hiring or you write a blog somewhere, anything that you want to share, please feel free to use this as a platform.
Hey,
Sure, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, and happy to connect. And I always share things of interest on LinkedIn, so it'll be great to stay in touch.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Abhishek. If you guys can share your IDs in the chat also, that'll be great.
Sure. I also request that please let me know how we can improve the session. Anything further in terms of presentation or content, or how it can be communicated so it's more effective in the future sessions.
Absolutely. We'll be sharing a feedback form on that. So we'll share the results with you as well. So all of us are on the same page.
It was really awesome session, both of you. Like you really took us through a lot of different things. So thanks for that.
Pleasure, guys. Keep reading, keep doing these sessions. These are great and great questions. If you need to know more about lending, feel free to reach out to me. We're based in Mumbai, so at least for Mumbai folks, it can be after the coronavirus. We can all chat up.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Abhishek. Thanks so much, Pallavi. I think, we'll definitely connect again. And have a great evening, you guys. Have a great weekend. You guys can reach out to us on Twitter, or that is where we're most active, or email. And we'll also try helping all those questions that were unanswered in this session. We'll try getting back to you guys for sure. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you, Abhishek. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Guys.
Thanks, everyone.